It was just another quiet night in the village. The crickets sang their usual chorus. The moon hung lazily above the rooftops, and inside Mama's small hut, the whole family was fast asleep. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing looked unusual, but that was the very night something unusual began to unfold. Shola, Mama's youngest daughter, had developed a strange habit that no one knew of. When the house grew still and everyone drifted into sleep, she would sneak out silently, her bare feet barely making a sound on the mud floor. This night was no different, but something happened. Mama, who hardly ever woke up at night, suddenly stared. Perhaps it was hunger, or maybe a mother's instinct kicking in. She reached for her wrapper to step into the kitchen, but when her eyes swept across the room, her heart froze. Shola's mat was empty. Mama blinked. Maybe Shola had only gone outside to ease herself, she thought. She waited. Minutes passed. Shola didn't return. Panic began to rise like a tide. Mama tiptoed outside, scanning the compound, whispering her daughter's name, but met silence. Her mind raced. Should she wake her husband? Should she alert the neighbors? If it turned out to be nothing, she would become a laughingstock in the whole village. But her heart pounded louder with each passing moment. Then, just before the first cock crowed, the door creaked open. There was Shola, slipping back inside as though she had never been gone. No sweat on her brow, no dirt on her feet. She just slid under her wrapper quietly, her breathing calm and steady, like a child who had been asleep all along. Mama, who had gone back to her room and came back to check on her again, stood in shock, watching her sleep peacefully on the mat she saw empty moments ago. Her fear deepened. This was not an ordinary mischief. How could a child vanish into the night and return without a trace? From that night, Mama's heart could not rest. Something deeper was at play, something beyond what her eyes could see. And although Shola lay peacefully on her mat, Mama knew this was not ordinary at all. After that night, Mama's mind refused to settle. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination and what happened wasn't real, that Shola had only slept outside to ease herself. But deep down, she knew what she saw. Her daughter had been gone and she had returned like she never left. So Mama began to watch. Every night, when the house grew still, she would lie on her mat with one eye open, waiting. And almost like clockwork, Shola's mat would be empty before dawn. It soon became a pattern. Mama wrestled within herself. She wanted to let her husband know, but she was scared of the words leaving the walls of her house. People would accuse her daughter of being possessed, and that would dent the family's image. So Mama swallowed her words. She wouldn't give anyone the chance to mock her. This was her daughter, her blood. She carried the burden quietly. One night, as she sat at the corner of the room, facing the door, she convinced herself she would catch her in the act and would trace where she always went. But another strange thing happened. Every time she kept watch, no matter how determined she was, her eyelids would grow heavy. It was as though an unseen hand pressed them shut. Before she knew it, she would drift into a deep sleep, only to wake up and find Shola back on her mat, breathing softly like a child who never moved. Same thing happened as many nights as she tried. She began to wonder, is this ordinary? Or is something making me sleep? The more Mama tried to uncover the truth, the more helpless she felt. And the more helpless she felt, the stronger the mystery around Shola's secret grew. When she had had enough, she decided to ask Shola, but in a cruel turn of events, she slept longer that day and only woke up after she had left the house. She could feel something didn't want her to know, but determined to find out, she gathered cold ashes from the cooking hearth, scooped them quietly into a calabash. She waited until Shola retired to her mat before slipping into the corridor. She carefully poured the ashes into her nightwear's pocket. Then she pretended to fall asleep. She opened her eyes later and found Shola's mat empty. She tied her wrapper tightly, picked up her lantern, and began to walk into the dark. Faint but clear, the ashes from Shola's pocket had formed a broken trail on the compound soil, glowing pale under the moonlight until she was outside the compound, leading toward a deserted village path. Each step she made down the road was heavy with dread. She soon found herself in the center of the village square. She froze immediately and lifted her lantern. Shola was there, but she was not alone. A tall, distinct figure drew closer to her with a rising smoke. Shola stood still, her head bowed, listening to the dark figure. Mama's lips trembled. She watched as they spoke, but didn't understand the words that flew from the dark man's mouth. She staggered back to the family's compound in awe of what she had seen. The next morning, she could not hold her peace anymore. Her body had grown weary from relentless nights, but her spirit burned with questions. She asked Shola who the strange man was and found out he was a seer who told her about things that could happen in the future. In the days that followed, Mama began to understand her better. She realized her daughter knew things no one else did or should know. But she knew that having raw knowledge like that, even if born out of a child's curiosity, could destroy. It can divide a village, expose wounds too deep to heal, or turn a child into something the world is not ready to see. At first, the people marveled. When Shola warned that the river would overflow before the rains came heavy, and it did, they called her blessed. When she told Mama Chika where to find her missing goat, they called her a prophetess. Mama watched with pride mixed with unease. But admiration has a short life. One evening, under the big tree at the center of the village, Shola exposed a big secret. Mama's heart pounded as she dragged Shola away. What had begun as a wonder soon soared into suspicion. Envy crept in. Some mothers asked, "Why is it Shola alone?" Some men muttered, "If she can expose one person, she can expose us all." People began to avoid her, whisper when she passed, and stare with a mix of fear and contempt. Mama realized the knowledge Shola received had become a weapon cutting deeper than either of them intended. Shola asked if she should stop listening to the strange man's stories, but Mama had no answer. And as the days rolled by, she felt more drawn to the strange man's stories the more. This time, the being's words were different. They were darker. It spoke of a secret buried deep in the heart of the village, a betrayal capable of tearing families apart. Shola's small frame stiffened as she listened. Her eyes widened with the burden of what she now carried. Shola's lips trembled. She was scared of what people would say if she exposed the secret. Mama held her close, the weight of motherhood pressing heavier than ever. "Shola," Mama said gently, "truth is not just about what you know. It's about when and how you speak it. Not every truth is meant to be shouted in the market square. Sometimes wisdom is silence. Sometimes it is guiding people without exposing them." The words formed roots like seeds in Shola's heart. She realized she didn't have to repeat everything being told her. She could choose, she could sift, she could protect. At dawn, when the cock crowed and the village stirred awake, Shola stood taller than her years. She did not reveal the secret in its raw, destructive form. Instead, she chose restraint, offering counsel that healed rather than caused harm, guiding her people without shaming them. That morning, the being's voice grew faint, almost like an echo retreating into the shadows, not gone, but no longer ruling her. Shola had outgrown blind listening. She had become master of her gift, not a slave to it. From that day, she no longer snuck out into the night. She didn't need to. She carried the square, the stories, the wisdom inside her. She was no longer just a child chasing mysteries. She was now a custodian of truth, shaped by choice, by restraint, and by the fire of her own journey.